We are now recording. So I'm going to leave everybody able to unmute themselves or mute themselves in case you have questions, whatever it may be. And we're going to start off as how many of you have created a new repository in GitHub and used it rather than just cloning something down? Has anybody done that yet? No? Okay, so we're going to start off with that. We're actually going to create a repository for this little intro. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over day one of the training kit with the little light bulb thing that they have you do for React. And we're going to build that out today. But we're going to put it on GitHub and everything. So I will start sharing and we'll start with that. And if anybody has a question at any point, just speak up and stop me and I'll do my best to answer it. So here's the training kit for the intro into React, the first part of this. And it gives you a series of videos I recommend watching. It kind of explains, what React is, intro into components in React, which you guys actually kind of already know. You've been building components for the past 2 days. They just haven't been React components, but they're real similar. What component state is and changing state on the intro into React. So what we're going to build today is they have this little project with this light bulb here. Let me get down here. And it has a light bulb that's off and on. And they're two separate images. And we're going to build a React app that's going to toggle those images back and forth with like a light switch on or off. And we're going to be able to do that without the page ever refreshing, ever reloading. It's all going to be just like that.
What?
All right. So, but first we're going to start by creating a repository. So, this out of the way. So in GitHub, whenever you want to create a repository, you just basically click on repositories here under your profile and new.
The apartment, it's not a problem.
Yeah. So when you're at this point, the first thing you got to do is give the repository a name, and we'll call this one, we'll call it Web33 intro. All right, we'll give it a description. We'll say it's intro into React. I'm gonna make it public. I'm not gonna initialize it with a README at this time because what we're gonna do, that brings me to another point, is Gabe posted a link to a video in the channel, and that's how to build a React app from scratch. So like if you want to init a package JSON, and bring in all the React dependencies individually and build one from scratch, he's got a good video on how to do that. What we're gonna do today is I'm gonna show you another way to do that. That's actually using a package called Create React App. That like does all that for you all at once, but it comes with some extra stuff that most of the time we don't use that we end up erasing anyway. So that way you guys, if you watch his video and this, you'll be able to see both ways of how that works. So, but Create React App comes with a README, so we don't have to initialize the repository with a README. We're going to get that automatically. I am, however, going to add the MIT license to this. I recommend adding the MIT license to any of your repositories that you do as far as side projects or anything. It kind of protects you for anybody that goes in and might copy your code and it does something malicious or breaks something. They can't come back on you and sue you over it, basically. So definitely add that license. And then we're just going to create the repository. And now we have a repository that just has a license in it with a master branch. So nothing else there. So I'm going to go ahead and just like a regular project, I'm just going to copy this to the clipboard and I'm going to open my terminal up. And I'm going to cd where I want this project to live. So this is going to look pretty similar to what you guys already know. And then when I get here, I'm just going to use the git clone method and I'm going to clone that repository I just made. And then I'm going to open it with code just so you guys can see what it is. So code, what did I name this thing again? I can't remember. This is Web33 intro. So this should pop up our code. So as you can see, we've got our GitHub clone. All we have in here is the license, nothing else. I'm going to pop open the terminal here, and we're going to make this a React app now. And how you create a React app is you use a command through npx. So npx, the command is create-react-app. And then the second portion of this would be the name of your app. It's basically Web33 intro, so I'm just going to use the period. So that's going to carry the current name of the directory and just put all the files in there that way.
You're missing the E on your create.
Oh, I am, and it's gonna
Just-
break.
Just
Yes.
kidding. I tried to get you.
It's always a typo, isn't it? All right, now it might work. There's a chance. And what this is doing is it's basically spooling up all the dependencies that React needs, the package JSON, it's got a public and a source folder in it. It's going to spool all that up for us and build a basic file structure. And what I always thought was the cool thing about React app when I was starting out, it just actually has stuff that renders to the page right away the moment you do this. So you can look at it and see stuff happening. Like it's got this fancy little spinning logo that says React app on it. It's pretty cool. So it's still going. We're moving at the speed of MPX now.
Real quick, what was that? What was that NPX? What?
Create React app, separated by hyphens.
Yeah, and then you can do a space after that and then name your create React app.
Yeah. The second argument is for a name. I used a period in this case because I'm just gonna name it Web33 intro. Just carry the same name. And there we go. And you can see all this stuff that just got added. So let's check this out. We'll start with the, obviously we got node modules, which you guys are used to. That's part of the NPM package that comes with everything with the package JSON. It gave us a get ignore file right away, even though we're already a Git repository. Now we have the get ignore file, so we won't be pushing like our node modules folders or anything that's sensitive up to source control. And we get this public folder. The public folder has, this is where your index HTML lives. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. So the head's got a bunch of stuff in it as far as, your responsiveness for your initial scale. It's got a description that React app puts in there, like website used, created using create React app. It's got an Apple Touch icon, a manifest with the manifest JSON, and a title of React app. So we could change this to Web33 intro. And that'll change the title on the page, just like normal HTML. It also gives you a no, a no script here. And that's if somebody has a browser that doesn't have JavaScript enabled, obviously this React app won't work. And the last thing you'll see is it's just got a div with an ID of root and nothing else. This is our entry point, kind of like you guys were doing with the document query selector, div ID. What React is doing is it's using query selector and grabbing the ID of root, and this is where your whole React app is going to be deployed, is inside of this one div. So it's got a couple of pictures of manifest. The rest of that you really don't have to worry about. We'll save this. And the next thing we'll explore is source. Source is where your React stuff lives, basically. You can see it's got CSS files in here. It's got an index.js file and an app.js file. So we'll look at the index first. Index, you could see it's importing dependencies, kind of like you guys imported Axios. It's bringing in React, and it's bringing in React DOM. And what React DOM is it's a virtual DOM. It's basically takes a copy of what's displayed, the actual DOM that your browser displays, and it changes little bits and pieces of it as state changes in the application without ever having to reload the actual DOM and reload the browser. You see it's bringing in the CSS and it's importing app, which app is this. So it's bringing that into this file to show it. The service worker, don't worry about that. And then you can see this is the function right here. React DOM.render. So this is what calls the render function on it. And you can see it's got this strict mode wrapped in app. So it's saying that I'm going to render app. So app and all of its children are going to get rendered to the screen. And then this part should look familiar to you guys. This is it's getting the element by ID root. That's where it's putting it all in. And that's what stages it up. And then if you go into app.js, because we're getting app in here, I'm sorry, we're importing app into index to display. So app has a bunch of things happening. App, you can see any React component, you're going to have to bring in React, by the way. You're going to have to import that. But it's just a JavaScript function at the end of the day. The return statement looks a lot different. Now you're going to look at this and you're going to say right away, hey, that's HTML. And if you get some of them hardcore React people and you tell them that's HTML, they're going to tell you, no, it's not. Don't ever call it that. That is called JSX. It is basically an HTML type language written in JavaScript. And you can see some things are different, like where they had the curly braces here with the logo. You'll see like it says class name here, kind of like how you wrote it in JavaScript rather than just writing class equals. That's about the main difference. And the other difference is you can rename these tags anything you want. These are all considered individual, like little component structures in React. So there's a lot of power in this return statement with JSX. And then the last thing I'm going to go into real quick is the package JSON. This is where all of your dependencies live and all of your scripts live. So you can see the dependencies that were brought in are some testing dependencies if you want to write tests for your app. But the three main ones are right here: React, React DOM, and React scripts. We already went over kind of like what React and React DOM are doing. You need those for the application to operate. The scripts are what runs this stuff right here. So your first script is start. That start command, that's what you're going to use when you're developing your app. You're going to type it in real similar to the apps that we did this week, where you type in npm start. We're going to do the same thing, except this time it's going to call the script React script start and spool up a server with the React application. The build, that's what it runs when you deploy the application. That's the build state of your app. That's what actually gets deployed when you're finished and you got it out there on the World Wide Web. The test script will run the tests, and eject, that ejects it like basically undoes the build command if you're doing it in a manual way. You shouldn't ever have to really worry about these two. On deployment, most deployment applications do this automatically for you, the build command. The main thing you're going to concern yourself with through this is start and test. The rest of the stuff is pretty much boilerplate. And let's fire this thing up and see what happens. So I'm going to type in npm start. And this React app should fire up. We'll bring it over to the browser.
Quick question.
Shoot.
Sorry, the React DOM that you were talking about by the imports, what is that? That's like a secondary DOM?
Yeah, that's basically how React operates. It uses what they call a virtual DOM, which is a copy of the actual DOM.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no problem. And you can see this is all boilerplate right here. This is exactly what we got from Create React App. Fancy little spinning logo, so on and so forth. And that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna open a second terminal here so we can do some git commands. I might git checkout -b. I'll just use my name. And I'm gonna make my first commit to that repository we made. And this way, this all gets put up there.
Chris, what version control plugin is that?
Oh, this right here, it's called Pipeline.
Nice.
Yeah, I like it. It's pretty cool. All right, so now that we have that, let's start going through the training kit. Let's see what they got us doing. We'll just kind of follow that, so like almost like a step-by-step, and see if we can reproduce in the training kit what we have going on in our actual app. So we'll start here. All right, anatomy of a React component. This looks similar to what we had in app. So let's go back to app. Can everybody see everything on the screen okay? Good there? Okay. So let's kind of copy what we have here. We don't need this logo stuff. Let's erase that. And we're going to ditch all of this, but we're going to leave the div with the class name app. And if we save that, we should see that our app is now empty. We just got rid of everything. It's just a blank screen. It's still running, but there's nothing there. So let's try and open this up back the way it was. I hate it when it autocorrects like that. Close that up. And in here, we're going to reproduce what they have. So let's just make it H1. Let's make a heading that says hi Lambda. We'll make it say hi Web33. And I'm going to save that. Let's see if it pops up there. Hey, look, there it is. React app. So we got that covered. And you can see this looks real similar to HTML, and it is. It's very similar. It's basically like HTML and JavaScript. So we got that. Let's see. That goes over that a little bit. It kind of gives you an explanation about how the types work with the div, the props of the children, gives it a type H1. This is how it actually breaks down this JSX here into actual JavaScript and into objects. So you can see why it's not technically HTML. This is compiling into something that looks like this. Let's go see here. We got, yeah, let's do that. So we're gonna, this is gonna show you how you can assign something to a variable and then display that inside that H1. So we're gonna create a variable in here. We'll call it const greeting. We're gonna set that equal to a string that says hi, yeah, Web33 again with an exclamation point this time. And instead of having this hard coded in here, you can use curly braces. That defines raw JavaScript in JSX whenever you have those curly braces. And we can just literally type in greeting. We can type in our greeting variable. And then when we check our app, it's still there with the exclamation point.
Learning a little bit more.
So it's displaying JavaScript.
I need to do dishes too.
Displaying JavaScript right in the application. And let's move on a little further. We got hi Lambda, greeting. Yeah, okay, that's a good example. Like if you wanted to do any kind of JavaScript operations in here, like 2 + 2 is what they do in here. We're doing a little math in here, right? We'll get 4. You know, we could do 2 × 5, 10, and it'll display it all like that. So, all right, and why we do it this way? Let's see here. Yeah, if you look over here, they give you a very good example about what the difference is between doing this and doing it in raw JavaScript. So you can see right here, we have a JSX with a class of button. And I'm sorry, that's the HTML file with a class of button. And then in JavaScript file, we're saying, you know, go let button, get the button, add a listener click, and run some logic. With React, it's all one line. You literally call the button in the return with an onClick function, write some logic in there, and it's done. So it's definitely a little more concise than the JavaScript. Let's see here. This is programming, declarative programming, having an array, looping over an array. Yeah, that's pretty much just an explanation. And I think this is where we start making our light bulb. So yeah, let's kind of copy this and see what's going on here. So they got an image tag in there. We're gonna wipe this out. And we're gonna put that image tag in. So we're gonna say image, we have a source, it's equal to a string. That's, I wonder if it'll let me just copy this. I'm curious to see what this picture is. Let's find out. I'm pretty sure it's the light bulb. Oh, it's gonna yell at me because I don't have an alt tag. So let's put that in there and call it light bulb. And that just way overran because that was a long string. But let's save that and let's see what shows up. Oh, we got a light bulb. That's cool. So what's next? Okay, so one more trick you can do in JSX, you can evaluate JavaScript expressions. We can read variables, run functions, and read data from objects or arrays, all kinds of things. You can do this We use curly braces. Here we use curly braces to render the value of an object properly as a header, and then we evaluate the string variable as the source of the image. So you can see where they're setting the variable const image rather than putting it right in the tag. And we can do the same thing. We can say const image, and that's going to equal that string, that same string that we just used. All right, so we have that variable, and we could say const object title. Yeah, we can add another one right to that. So const, this would be for the alt tag. Title equals light bulb. All right, so we have those. Now in here, rather than having this alt light bulb, we could just put curly braces in here and say object title. And the same thing with this one. We could delete all this nonsense because it's pretty long. And we can define that with curly braces as the image. And save that, and we should see the same thing, a light bulb. All right. And what else did they add to this? They gave it a title and an image. We could give it a title. Yeah, well, let's do that. So we'll give it an H2. And then here we're going to use our curly braces, and we'll call object title. And then we'll display the image. Yeah. So now we should see a heading, light bulb, and the actual light bulb itself. Cool. All right. So now we're going to get a little more carried away now. So now we got two light bulbs. We have a white light bulb and a yellow light bulb. And we're going to define those into two separate ones just like they have it. And eventually at the end of this, we're going to have like a little button that toggles the light on and off and does it all without the page out refreshing. It's kind of cool how it all works. So we have the yellow light bulb now. So we'll just go ahead and name this yellow. And we're going to make a new variable called white. We'll set that equal to this other image. All right, and now in here, we can say this image source is white. And then we'll make another one for the source equal to yellow. And it's going to yell at me about the alt tag. So let's do that. Should be in practice for doing that anyway. Object title. There we go. And let's save that and check our app again. Now we have both light bulbs. We're just like they have it in the training kit. All right, and down here, what they're doing is showing you state. Now, the state of an application is basically the different states it could be in. So think about it this way. Our state of our application now with these light bulbs could be in two states roughly. The light bulb could be on or it could be off. So what the state allows you to do in React is it allows you to store data and conditionally change that data or set that data or reset that data without the page ever reloading or refreshing. And how you use that is it's called useState, which is a React hook. And we're going to bring that in. You got to import it just like so. So we have a useState coming in, and then you define it with a const. And it's destructured by its properties that it carries with square brackets. So we're going to write it just like they have it in the training kit. This is light on, if I can spell. And that is basically, that's like your constant variable. So if you ever want to display whatever property this is, that's what you call. And the next portion of this is what they call like the setter. And it's set light on is what they have it named. And this is actually a function. And this function, what it'll do is it will set this variable right here to whatever you tell it to. And this involves useState. So we got to set that equal to the useState hook. And then inside of this parameter of useState that is empty right now, you can set a default value to the state for the initial load of the page. So let's say you're making an API call, but it's not coming back yet. You can set this to a string that says loading and have it say loading. And then when your API comes in and resets state, it removes loading and actually displays your information. So you can kind of get a good UI sense of what state's giving you. So we have that now all set up. We got our variables, we got our state. Let's see, what else do we have? The use state hook is fundamental to that value. Let's change use state. Okay, we're gonna set light on to false. So they're showing you the default value. So we're gonna say the light is initially off right now. All right. And you can set light on as a function. So yeah, let's write that function. Let's do that real quick. We're gonna declare a function in React, and we can do that basically all the ways that you learned how to write a function already. We can say function, or you can use a fat arrow function with a const variable. Just keep in mind that all the JavaScript rules do apply. Like fat arrow functions don't hoist, functions do. I personally like, I like to use function for my initial call of my component, but inside of that component, I like to use the fat arrow functions. So we're just gonna say const, this is called set light on, but they've already declared that. So, oh, I see what they're doing. Never mind. They're basically saying that they're explaining that's the function that sets this light. So let's scroll down to the next version. All right, this is what they call conditional rendering. So we're gonna put that in play. And what you could do is you could define conditional rendering in here with a pair of curly braces. So what we're going to say is we're going to check that light on variable. We're going to say light on with a question mark. That basically says, is light on defined? Now my JavaScript rules, false, undefined, and 0 are all considered undefined basically at the end of the day. So it won't trigger this, but any other value of true, arrays, objects, even if they're empty, any kind of words, phrases, or anything that considers defined, and then it'll go ahead and run this stuff, or it'll run whatever you tell it to. So we're saying if light's on, we're gonna run this JSX here, the yellow, because if the light's on, we want to run yellow. So we're gonna cut this out, and we're gonna put it in here. And then the other one is a question mark. This is your else statement. So if the light is off, we want it to be the white bulb. And that's all we're doing right there. So now we're watching that state variable for a change to determine what our application renders. So if you see right now, it's white. But if I go in here and I just manually change this to true, it's yellow. And back to false. So you see how it's conditionally checking JavaScript to decide what it renders to the page. So that's some of the power of React and how that works. The next thing we're going to do is, I believe the next thing we do is actually create our function, our button. So yeah, okay, so they're making a button right here. So let's create a button. Let's do that. We're gonna go under here, and did they use button? No, they got it actually clicking on it. That's kind of new, cool. We'll do it that way. So on the div that wraps everything, they got an on click on here. So we're gonna say on click equals to some JavaScript. It's gonna be all on click functions in here take a callback. And we're gonna call that set light on. And we're gonna set it to not light on. Does that make sense to everybody what's happening right there? So we basically just created an on-click toggle type function. So whenever we click on this div, which is basically the whole div of our app, if light on is false, it's going to set it to true. If light on is true, it's going to set it to false. So let's save that and see what happens. So we're initially false, but if I click on this, it goes yellow. I click it again, it goes white. And I can go back and forth and toggle it. And if you notice, the page never refreshes, never reloads. It is doing this in real time, all at once, the loading, everything. That's the virtual DOM sending little chunks and pieces to the actual DOM of the browser of what's happening. So that's pretty cool. Lights flipping back and forth. Turn the light on and off. And now that we've done that, I think that's about, yeah, here they're explaining where you don't, what happens if you don't use a callback. So if you don't use a callback in this onClick function, it will actually send your application into an infinite loop. It'll sit there and just try and re-render and refresh itself. It needs that callback as like a gatekeeper, like a catch, so it doesn't try and constantly run that function in there. So keep that in mind when you're writing stuff, that the callback functions are your friend. When in doubt, make it a callback. That's the way I always look at it. It never hurts. Let's see, do they do anything else in here as far as that goes? Yeah, we're at this point of the training kit already. And that's the end of that. So any questions at this point? Anybody got any questions? No questions? I figured I'd at least confuse some of y'all at this point.
I mean, why did you think it was cooler just to click on the div rather than make a button?
That's the way the training kit had it. We'll make a button. You guys want to make a button? Let's make a
I wanna
button.
make a button.
Let's make a button. We'll put it at the bottom, all right? So we'll call it a button that has an on-click. Let's close it up and let's give that button a name. So you know what? We could set up we can get creative. We're gonna set up another state.
Why don't we make the button in a different file?
We could do that too. How about we do it this way and then we break it into a different file and we start passing props? You guys want to do that? That could be fun. Yeah, let's do that. All right, I'm going to set a state of on. All right, this is going to be, we'll call this light state. And actually, I wonder if I could do that. No, we'll call it button state because I want to show you guys something else about the power of this. And we're going to set button state. And we're going to use state again. That's the beauty of custom hooks. You never used to be able to do this in React. So the custom hooks allow you to use that state. You can set up little pieces of state all the way through. You can use it multiple times in a component, which I think is super cool. So our initial value of useState is going to be, we're going to call it turn on a string. It's going to say turn on. And inside of our button here, we are going to call that JavaScript button state, that variable. So this is our variable, this is our setter. So now if we do, oh wait, I'm outside the div, it's going to be mad. Let's put that up here, that's better. And we should have a button that says turn on. So we got a little button that says I could turn this light bulb on. So at the end of the day, when we click this button, we're going to want this to turn on. So on this button, we're going to create a helper function up here, and we're going to call it const. We're going to call it handle button. So this is going to handle the button. That's going to be equal to a fat arrow function. It's going to be anonymous fat arrow function. And what this is going to do is it's going to set the button state. It's going to set the button state to, actually, you know what? Let me do this differently. I'm overthinking this. Let's do it this way. We're going to make this false as well. I probably could have done it with the same useState now that I'm thinking about it. But in here, we're going to do another conditional render. We're going to say button state. If button state is defined, we're going to want this to say turn off. Otherwise, we want it to say, in quotes there, turn on. So now in this state, it should say turn on still. And on this handler function, we're going to call two different things. We're going to say set button state. Excuse me. Set button state to not button state. And we're also going to call set light on to not light on. And I'm going to get rid of this on click that's in here. And inside of this button, I want to add that on click. And I'm going to set that equal to a callback. Don't want that infinite loop. And I'm just going to call that handle button function. Just like that. So now we have that going. Let's see if it works. Ooh, and now it says turn off. And you click it, turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off. Pretty neat, huh? All right, any questions on how that worked? Ah, man. Either nobody's paying attention to me or everybody's really getting
Where is handle button coming from? Like,
it. That's the function I wrote up here.
oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
So I rather, and the only reason I really do this, and I like to do it, is it keeps your JSX less cluttered. Because you could actually write this function right in an on click of a button, and then your button turns into like it's 12, 13 lines of code. And then when you're going to check your JSX, it's like, okay, where's the button end? But if you use helper functions and so on and so forth, it makes it easier to read your JSX code, and it makes it also easier to pass those as props when you're using components. So matter of fact, now that we're at this point, that's pretty much the end of day one's training on React, believe it or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some components. We're going to pass some props. So what I'm going to do is over in the source file, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it components. This is where all of my components for my app are going to live. And in here, I'm going to make a new file. Let's see. I think Tommy said he wanted the button in a file, so let's make the button a file. So we're gonna make a I can't even talk. Make a file called button.js. So now we have a file. So let's we know this is going to be a React component, so we're going to import React from React. All right, and then I'm going to export a function called button. And that button's going to take in props. And what it's going to do is it's going to return. And I'm going to show you guys a neat trick with React. It's going to return. This isn't even an empty div. This just makes React happy when you do this. Because the return statement of React can only have one child. So normally it used to be a div, and then you would nest everything else, all your stuff inside of that div, so it would only have one child. React now allows you to just call these empty brackets as the parent, so it only has the one child. And in here, I'm going to put a button. All right, so I'm going to have my button in here, but now it's like, well, how do I get my stuff from app, like my handle button, my button state, all that stuff? How do I get that to my button now? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to import that button now. So we're going to import, and because I called it as an individual export, it's considered destructured. So I have to call my button this way. I'm going to bring that in from components button. So now I have my button there. I can get rid of all of this, and I'm going to call my button component inside of my return of app. And I call it just by saying button and slash. Now my button's there, but it's just an empty button now because I lost all of my information. To get that information back, I have to pass it to that file in a method that React calls props, passing props. And how you pass props is actually right inside of your component call. You give it a name and you give it a value, almost like a key value pair of an object. So can anybody think real quick, what props would I need for this button?
Turn on and turn off.
Yeah, okay, so we need the light on state, light on and set light on, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to say light on. This actually button's going to have a lot of props. I'm going to set that equal to light on. And what this is right here, this is the name that we're giving the prop. This is the actual value that we're sending down to it. They normally end up named the same because that eliminates confusion, but that's exactly what's happening there. To the left is the name that we're giving it. To the right is what we're at, the actual value that we're sending in. And we're also going to need the setter for it. Actually, we don't even need those. We got everything that this is doing. It's being handled here at this handler function. So we don't have to type this in 4 times. You see that the awesomeness of having that helper function? All we have to do is we can call it handle button equals handle button. And now we just pass this whole function down as a prop to that button. So now let's check that out. We still have an empty button, but we're passing props. So we're going to go into our button component, and we're going to use our old friend console log. And we're going to console log those props and see what they are. So props are being passed into the component here, and I'm going to console log them, and we're going to inspect this page and see what we get. You see we're getting an object back, and that object has a key called handle button. So that key is actually what we named it here. That's where that key comes from, and its value is an anonymous function. You can see it's a function right there. Takes no arguments. It's got a couple other things. You got the Dunder proto in here. Similar things to what you guys have already seen. But so you can see props is just an object. That's all it is. And you can navigate props just like you navigate any other object. So we have that handle button method. So let's go back into our button and let's add our on click event to that. So on the click of the button, we want to do something. And how we're going to define that is we're going to take props, the props object, and I got to use my callback or I might have a loop. I almost forgot. We're going to say props dot handle button and invoke it. And now we're going to be able to invoke that function through props. And while we're at it, why don't we give our button the text that it needs? Let's do that real quick. All right, so our text is going to be real similar. We're going to do a conditional render on this as well. We're going to say, we're going to assign that prop to a variable so it's easier to write. We are going to destructure out. Oh, I got to pass it first. That makes sense. We have to pass that value explicitly to this so it knows what it is. And the value that I'm passing is just this button state value. I'm not worried about the setter. I don't need the setter, but I need to know what this value is as to what my button says. So we're going to pass that as a prop as well. We're going to say button state equals button state. So we did end up needing a button state. So down here, I'm going to just destructure that button state. I'm going to say const in curly braces because I know props is an object. I'm going to say button state. I'm going to set that equal to props. So that should destructure that button state out of the props. Ooh, it just kind of like broke. Why did I get a debugger? Oh, go back to the console. All right, and you can see how that's destructured by just even console log and changing that console log from props. This is console log the button state. And see what it looks like. And you'll see it's probably just a false variable. Yep. Is that it? No, I think my live server just totally crashed. Nope, there it is. So you see we got false. So by destructuring that props up here, it saves us from typing props like 4 or 5 times when we're calling our conditional render. So I can just do the same thing, the same logic. Button state, question mark. If button state's there, we're going to say this says turn on or turn off, and then else turn on. And that should render some text. Okay, and now we have it. Let's see if it works. Where did that come from? That wasn't supposed to be there. And that's not supposed to be there. There we go. All right, let's click it and see what happens. Oh, it's working. And you can see where we're console logging that value of props of true and false. And what's really neat about this is that the page never refreshes, never reloads. That value does not live in this file. We're actually getting that from up here at a higher level in app, and we're passing that value through to this component and then operating that component, and it's all working in unison. So any questions on that and passing those props? Harrison's grinning. You got a question, Harrison? I can even.
Oh, no question. It was funny. I mean, I know there's questions out there, but I mean, it's the right after a sprint and we're going over some React stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be too primed to jump in there with my questions either.
All right. Well, we're just having fun playing with React.
I
we
have a
can do-
question.
Shoot.
I have a question for you guys, for the
Ooh.
students here.
Oh.
Do you see a use case for why you might want to make that button in a different file? Can you think of a reason why?
Because then we would be able to, if we had a different part in the application somewhere where we needed to use that same piece of code to render a button, but just maybe swap out the text on the button, we wouldn't have to create a whole separate component. We could just reference that component, but then swap out the text in line or something like that.
Perfect.
That's it.
Yep.
Reusable code. Components can be passed around and reused. Awesome. All right. Well, speaking of components, should we make some more? We got a little bit of time left. I was going to run this for about the next 10 or 12 minutes. We can make another component. We can make a component for this light bulb if we wanted to. Yeah. Let's make a light bulb component. So we're going to go into our components and we're going to make a new file and we'll call it light bulb. And that is convention, by the way. All React components are just like your constructor functions that you made. They're capital letters. And I've seen cases where if you don't capitalize that, React doesn't recognize it as a React component and it won't work properly. So just keep that in mind. Any component is capitalized. So let's import React from React. And this time I'm just going to call the function. I'm going to show you a different way of importing it. I'm going to call the function light bulb. I like to keep my names of my components the same as the file name. It's going to take in props. And it's going to return something. We don't know what yet. We'll figure that out. We'll make our little component there. And then at the bottom of this, I'm going to type in export default light bulb. So now I have this function. I can go into app and import that in. So we're going to grab that just like we did the button. The difference is now I don't have to use these curly braces. I can just type in light bulb. I'm going to import light bulb from components, light bulb. And the reason I didn't have to use these curly braces is that if you look at the button, I exported that function. But in light bulb, I did an export default. That's the difference between calling them with the curly braces and without, as far as when you're bringing in your components. So now I'm going to just take, I'm going to copy this code for a moment. And I'm going to bring it over into here and drop it in. I hate to, ever since I installed that extension for labs, it's driving me nuts. And I'm just going to drop that in here, just for now. It's not going to like it yet because we don't have any way of defining this yet, but it's there. And I can remove this now. And you're going to see how stuff becomes less cluttered with the more components you make. And I'm going to call light bulb. Now it's going to go away at the moment, but it's gone. Why does that debugger kick on? It's because it's got an error. I wonder why it started doing that. Yeah, we can see we got all kinds of errors in here. It's yelling at me pretty hard because it's saying, I just imported this to display it, and none of this stuff exists right now because it doesn't know what it is. So let's start unbreaking this. Let's pass in the things that our light bulb's going to need. What do you think our light bulb component's going to need out of this application here?
Gonna need state again.
Which state?
Light on.
Yeah, it's going to need light on. All right. Anything else you can think of that it's going to need? What defines our light bulb? Our light bulb is basically an image, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, where do the URLs for the images go on here under the light bulb component?
We could pass them as a prop. We've got them up here. We might as well just pass them, right? We can say yellow equals yellow. Yeah. And we could say white equals white. So now all of that information is now part of that props object that we bring in. So now we have light on, we have yellow, we have white. Is there anything else you can think of we need for the light bulb component? I think we're good, actually. I think that should be enough. So let's go and let's start fixing that. So we know that's part of our props object. We can destructure that right out of props, just the portions that we need, by just saying light on. We could say yellow. And we can say white. And set that equal to props. So now we don't have to worry about chaining the props, like call them props.light on, props.yellow, props.white. The difference is we don't have this object title. It's going to yell about that. So let's go ahead and pass that in as well. Let's send in the object title. Okay, so we're going to have that too. And we're going to go back to our light bulb. We're going to bring that out of our props as well. Now, I think that's all we got to do. Let's refresh this. Hey, look, everything's back. Let's see if it still works. Oh, look at that. It's all working. And those are two components using different portions of this state being called right here, working together, because the state of the application is controlling what's happening. And that's pretty much it. I believe minus a use effect call. That's day 1 and 2 of next week. Any questions on that?
Chris, would you want to leave the URLs for those images on this page, or would it be better to keep those with the light bulb?
All depends on where you think you're going to need them. Just think of a React application as like a waterfall. And at the top of the waterfall is app.js. React has what they call a one-way data flow. So it all falls down into its children. So let's say I put this in light bulb, right? I could put it in light bulb. That'd be the only place I'd really need it at this point in the app. But what happens if I have another component in here? Just this is pseudocode, but this is another we'll call this fluorescent light.
I was gonna say make a chandelier, but you know, do you?
Yeah, let's say I had a fluorescent light component in here, and I wanted both those URLs for this fluorescent light. If I had these down in light bulb, I wouldn't be able to access them. But because they live up here in the parent, I can pass them down through the waterfall effect. So you can't ever pass data back up, but you can always pass it down to its children. Does that make sense?
Essentially think of the variables that are in apps, app.js as kind of your global variables.
Yeah, until you start getting into like using actual global state and things like that. And there's different ways to look at that. Like I try and keep variables very concise to their components. And if I need to move them up, that's when I move them up. Some people like to keep everything in app and just let everything cascade down as they need it. That's more of a personal preference, in my opinion, of what makes sense to you while you're writing this code. If it was me personally, I don't think I'd ever have this fluorescent light component. I would have these variables in the light bulb. And then if I ever had to make that fluorescent component, I would just literally go into that light bulb. I grab those variables, pop them out into the parent, and pass them down.
He just
So-
wanted to play with props.
Yeah, it's all about planning, really. Always plan your applications out when you're creating a new one. With good planning comes ease of code. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I hope that was kind of helpful for you. Any questions or closing? What's that?
Yeah, Chris. I have a question.
Shoot.
Yeah, so I think I'm getting confused because we're using the same name for so many things. But basically, when it comes to light bulb and it's like light on equals blah, 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 all this, that's basically setting what the parameters are asking for in the props variable on the component, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So like, just to give a better example of that, there's a lot going on in a light bulb. Let's console log these props in here. And the biggest thing to remember is that props is just an object. And you can see right here in this console log, here's our props object. And if we open this up, you'll see that it has a bunch of keys. It's got a light on, an object title, and a white and a yellow. Well, how it gets those keys is here. That's the name we give it. Like,
Okay, so it's just, those are just the variables that are set up there, obviously. And then it's just saying, hey, for this for that object value, make it this variable, basically. Okay,
yes.
cool.
So yeah, everything to the left is a banana term. Like I could literally name this foo. Foo's common in there. And when I save that, you'll see that the value didn't change, but now I have a key of foo.
Oh, okay, yes. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
One more
Alright.
quick question. Just sorry. So does the order matter? Like, would you have to have light on before yellow? Would that put in the wrong spot, basically?
Nope, because it's just an object, and an object has no order.
Okay, so okay, I get what you're saying. So the part on the right is what matters. That's what you're asking for.
Yes, this is the actual value of what you're passing in, what this equates to in the object.
All right, I think I understand.
But order-wise, like I can move this down here. I can move it in the middle of yellow and white, and it'll still come across the same. It still, I mean, the order will be a little different in here, but you can see it alphabetizes. The console does, even your object.
Okay.
That's how unordered it is.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
Oh yeah, yeah. It gets better. That's why I kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of a head start, something to think about for the weekend. Maybe play with it if you're bored. You know, create your own React app, start goofing off.
Yeah, I have a Udemy course. I think I'll go through that and try and nail it in my noggin.
Yeah, Udemy's got good stuff. So does Front End Masters. Front End Masters is really, really good stuff. And you actually get, I think it's 6 months free of Front End Masters courses through the GitHub Student Pack. So you might want to look into that too. All right. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you all enjoyed.
Sweet.
Hope I didn't screw it up or confuse you all too